GoFundMe, DeCastro loses to us? Saturday was another bad day for the campaigns of Jose Chile de Castro, with an overall take of $0 across 4 official fundraising campaigns, one completely fake one, and one that seems to be a tribute band of hatred against the bespectacled YouTube superstar. In the week that he returned to YouTube, he's gone from taking in thousands of dollars to hundreds of dollars to tens of dollars to completely being forgotten in the crowdsourcing space, as no one seems to be reacting to his call for action. He's lumped in with others that he considers inferior, like Sean Paul, Long Island Audit Riaz, Christopher Denver Metro Audits Cordova, and As Salmo. The alpha male, the top dog, the complete failure as a human being, a son and a father to the 5A cop card, an indestructible trifold, and an all-around swell guy? We've lingered too long in the world of DeCastro depression and despair and turn our attention to Direct D, since we're grading well below the curve at the moment. Christopher Direct D. Ruff started the summer with the willingness to clear his name of the nasty warrant out of Gilbert, Arizona for his arrest for skipping court dates. He was also angry because after he threatened to decapitate some police officers last year, a bulletin was issued warning the police of his violent threats. Direct D tends to ignore that little part because the bulletin was leaked by someone working in the police department and he was outraged. A little thing like saying he was going to cut some police officers' heads off is something that shouldn't be held against him, I guess. He swears he didn't mean it, that he's not violent, that he's learned. He's more outraged at the moment that the memo existed, and the police were doing something about the leak that saw him see the memo than anything else. But then again, this is the man who is so defiant of the police that he's remaining in his studio, getting high on camera and essentially seeing his life through a smoky cloud of smoke and what the fudge have I done to myself as he replays DMA video and says what a good boy am I. Yes, Direct D has also lost the plot. He is no longer challenging the police in live audits. He seems to be too scared of his outstanding warrants to leave his newly furnished studio. All he seems to want to do is get high and play the same old game the rest of the auditors are doing, recycling old anti-police videos and boosting each other while watching others take the fall. Again, at the start of the summer, he had a plan to raise his $100,000 to hire the same lawyers as James Freeman. He even had talk of having one of Freeman's lawyers establish himself in Arizona just to help Direct D and others fight against policies put in place by supposedly corrupt police forces and officials. There's been no movement since his donations have all but dried up to his GoFundMe campaign, and the only reality his fans need to face is that he's on a goal to become the first person in history to die from a overdose, which, believe it or not, is more likely to happen to him than me dying on air for Pope Phil's enjoyment. Be afraid. Christopher Direct D. Ruff's Clear His Name Fund stands at $11,395 out of its $100,000 goal and in an 11% completion rate. Since we're not monetized, if you'd like to join our daily hate watcher in making us try new fruits that will probably kill us while forcing us to write this column every day, we do have a GoFundMe of our own. All proceeds go to keeping lights on, eating, and writing new stories to feature here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. Turtle Boy says it's the other guys. As we're less than 24 hours away from the next hearing in Karen Reed's retrial for the second-degree murder of John O'Keefe, Aidan Turtleboy Kearney and others have stepped up to say that they are personally not guilty of anything related to anything. There you go, there's the story for the week. Turtleboy says everyone else did it, not me. The latest scandal rocking the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is the Great Front Yard Scandal, as supposedly members of the anti-Karen Reed movement, supposedly led by the soul-stealing Kate Peter, are going from lawn to lawn like a summertime Santa Claus, throwing balloons filled with bleach in an attempt to destroy the lawns of those involved in the Free Karen Reed movement. So vile and dire are these people that, much like the culprits who supposedly lynched a turtle earlier in the month, there's no footage from Ring cameras or other security cameras or hard evidence that this was carried out. But by God, there is outrage. Turtleboy is good, says Aidan Turtleboy Kearney, having Jess Machado on his Turtleboy Live program to swear under turtle oath that the only people who intimidate and harass anyone are the people on the other side. Everyone in the Free Karen Reed movement are saints, not sinners, who went to church, don't cheat on their wives, and would never film themselves themselves masturbating on their special couches and distribute those videos to others in an attempt to pick up women. No, despite folks from the movement sending public tweets to others to unalive themselves, there's no evidence, no outcry, and no proof whatsoever that they've ever done anything wrong. In fact, they've been persecuted. Aidan Kearney went to jail for your sins, for Karen Reed, and for America. We can see it now. No, not that image of him getting porn bombed by real porn filmed by himself last year, but Aidan appearing on Fox News and everywhere else, representing the good people of America and telling no lies as he looks you directly in the eye and tells his truths. Just don't shake his hand because you know where it's been and why it's sticky. The Turtle Boy outrage comes as he's attempting to rally troops in support of Karen Reed at her hearing tomorrow. At stake is currently 2 of the 3 charges against her, with her defense team now claiming that the jury actually found her not guilty of second-degree murder and leaving the crime scene after knowingly injuring someone with her car, despite not actually having that verdict entered into the record. They claim to have heard from a friend of someone who knows 6 of the jurors, and for sure it was 12-0 votes to acquit Reed, even though there have been no actual affidavits from any of the jurors involved, and the only juror who has given an affidavit about the case said they couldn't agree on anything. It's a long shot, but stranger things have happened, even though traditionally when there's been a mistrial and the jury doesn't come forward with an actual verdict, you don't get the rights to say, well, they were gonna find her not guilty, so let's just go with that. Kearney has been pushing the defense theory. He does expect to be among the crowd of supporters for Karen Reed at the courthouse tomorrow afternoon, and you can buy your free Karen Reed merchandise on his website because, with every dime he earns that is going into his tiny pockets, he's fighting for freedom. The Karen Reed murder trial continues on Monday. We'll be simulcasting coverage of it on our YouTube channel. GoFundMe, DeCastro fails again. Goose eggs, glorious goose eggs, are going to be the only takeaway from this column that you need to remember, as for the 3rd straight day, Jose Chile DeCastro has failed to captivate his audience long enough to get them to throw money at him. It means that we too have failed. We can mark that up to 2 days of very late papers and newscasts, as we forced ourselves to learn something new in the absolutely 0 hours of free time we have in order to do things other than the paper each day. This time we took the time to learn Unreal Engine and get Karen Reed renders up in time to use them for today's thumbnails for our ongoing coverage of her case. We did, however, spend money this weekend, a bit more than we had intended, as the Unreal Engine and Real Illusions I cloned had some tough times with licensing, which we're still grumbly about. See our Cash Apps and GoFundMe if you'd like to help. But as you can see in our Jim's Disturbing Renders forum, it was totally worth it. Discord membership required. There was a time that people would criticize this column as they looked at our actions and our promotions and asked us why we would spend so much time yelling about people asking for money in GoFundMe crowdfunding when wasn't that what we're doing ourselves. And to those folks, we say that they're kind of missing the point. We freely admit that we are begging for help until such times as we're monetized and we can earn a living off of YouTube. As we're already in poverty due to events outside of this column over the past 6 months, it wouldn't take a lot of money from YouTube to make us shut up a bit and be able to cover our own expenses. But we're also busting our ass every day for the little we bring in. We spend between 12 and 14 hours a day researching and writing articles for the paper, turning those articles into segments for the newscast, hosting live panels, hosting the live news watch-along parties, and otherwise doing things to improve the quality of what we present both here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. This column pokes fun at the creators who just throw up a crowdsourcing campaign and expect money to come rushing in for just creating the campaign. They don't do the extra work, they don't attempt to put out videos, host new lives, or bust their asses to make sure that their viewers, i.e. their customers, are happy and come back to their channels. Our niche is an old-style news radio show that you can throw on in the background without having to worry about the video and just listen to our stories. Our newsman voice and inflections are inspired by the character of Bill McNeil on the 90s TV show News Radio, with the sing-song inflection of days of old. It's not for everyone. Anyone born before 1999 is probably not going to understand it, proven by the comments we get from those folks. We offer up news either as a program you can sit down with every night, like we old people did with nightly newscasts of old, take in bite-sized snippets, join live to hang out, or just put one of our playlists up and marathon while you're doing other things. But we put time in it. We don't expect money to come flowing in because we do what we do each day. That's why we poke fun at the creators on this list. I mean, with close to 600,000 subscribers, shouldn't there be one person in Jose Chile de Castro's fandom to throw $5 at him if they're real? Sean Paul Long Island Audits Riaz gets a pass with close to 800,000 subscribers. He does everything he can to maximize revenue from them to the point where he doesn't need to crowdsource. Remember, this is the man who bought the $160,000 billboard truck before he crowdsourced for it, so he's not hurting at all. But everyone else? If you want to make a living off of crowdsourcing, or you need to crowdsource to fund your legal bills, you must do something to earn it. Throwing up a campaign is not enough these days. You've got to remind people, you've got to mention the campaign, and you've got to go the extra mile to promote something in return for their time, money, and investment in you. That's why we mock the lazy-ass creators who don't bother and then whine about their circumstances. The list is long and growing, and since we're not monetized, if you'd like to join our daily hate watcher and making us work our ass off for every penny that we take in while forcing us to write this column every day, we do have a GoFundMe of our own. All proceeds go to keeping the lights on, eating, and writing news stories to feature here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. Riaz audits a traffic and parking agency. In a video produced by Sean Paul Long Island Audit Riaz about Sean Paul Long Island Riaz, the reporter Riaz reported on the activist Riaz rejecting a plea deal and we the people affecting change in a confusing mess of pomp and circumstance and multiple Riazes living in the same person. The video was apparently shot at the Suffolk County Traffic and Parking Violations Agency at an unknown time and date and claims to be about retaliatory tickets and some sort of plea deal that reporter Riaz for sure claims are from retaliation and not poor driving or parking habits. Because after all, reporter Riaz, activist Riaz, and the man named Riaz seem to indicate that they all are incapable of sin, incorrect action, and by God, getting a traffic ticket that's not involved in a conspiracy. Approximately 7 minutes of the video was devoted to old footage of an incident reporter Riaz had at the facility the last time he was there conducting an audit. He was approached by several security and police officers who wanted him to stop recording, and he protested the signage prohibiting him from filming in the building. It was apparently filmed before orders in his lawsuit against the city and state of New York, which saw signage preventing filming in public areas of some police facilities removed. The signage wasn't present during the new audit, though the security officer asked if he was filming, and he denied doing so at the start of the audit. Reporter Riaz then encountered a woman in the ticketing area and explained that he received tickets for the individual windows of his SUV that were apparently improperly tinted. He claimed that under New York law, the back two windows could be of any darkness, and he was disputing the darkness of the front two windows. The woman moved to another window as she saw reporter Riaz was filming her, and she was uncomfortable being on film. She then said she'd dismiss 3 of the tickets and leave him with a single ticket. Driver Riaz objected to this and said he'd rather sue, using lawyer Riaz maybe, than face any tickets and take the tickets to trial. The woman walked away from him as he announced reporter Riaz was recording our public servants in the course of their duties and felt that it was hypocritical to object to his filming as there were security cameras in the building. Reporter Riaz then explained that the woman, who was unidentified, was a prosecutor who was conspiring to force him to take a plea deal by removing 3 of the tickets and leaving him with just 1. Driver/constitutional law scholar/sunglasses at night Riaz then went into a long-winded explanation about the tickets being retaliatory for using his constitutionally protected rights of freedom of speech and not for illegally tinted windows because, Christ-like Riaz can do no wrong. After a brief wait, the woman offered to drop the 3 tickets and drop the fine to $105 on the last ticket. Activist Riaz jumped in to say it wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that the officer was acting in retaliation and did not use a tint meter to measure the tint on the windows, and Riaz had negatively encountered the officer in the past. another wait, and he was given an August 26, 2024 court date. Reporter Riaz left the room and marveled that all the signage prohibiting recording had been removed as "We the People," i.e. reporter/activist/Christ/law scholar/sunglasses at night Riaz, affected changes for the better. All in all, the Riaz Collective gave the Suffolk County Traffic and Parking Violation Agency a passing grade. He was happy that the signs were removed and warned that the woman he was talked to was anti-transparency, and if she was not comfortable with reporter Riaz recording her, she should find a new job. Where in hell is Chile de Castro? Jose Chile de Castro took a rare day off from streaming on Sunday to focus on things that are important to him, which some would say are getting a buzz off of Freaky Friday items, pooping in a bucket, and figuring out what to do next with his life. Okay, Freaky Friday is the lamest way to get around saying crack. But the YouTube censor is only going to let us go so far before we're hit for saying naughty things on the air. The point is, he hasn't been on the air for the first time since returning to live streaming after his time in jail. It's just a continuation of his failure to capitalize on the goodwill and interest in his case after being wrongfully jailed by a corrupt judge. One of the benefits of writing the paper as a publication for so long is the fact that we can go back and examine data we wrote ourselves about a year ago. Yes, we're a biased source, but it is interesting to note that exactly a year ago, DeCastro had 300,000 less daily subscribers than he does now and drew about 260 live viewers per live stream. That would inflate up to 5 to 15,000 in total views after going live, then do under 100 comments and about 100 likes when all was said and done. Exactly like his metrics for the past week. Comparing the shows from last year until now, and they're exactly the same. Yes, it looks like he's changed studios, and yes, he now has something like 4 editors to replace Colin Project Constitution Campbell at his disposal, but the video product is the same, the topics are the same, the presentations are the same. Other than the addition of the 5A cop cards, he was making the same marketing pitches and sales on his trifolds then as he was doing now. There's been no progress. It's just like a never-ending video of bad infomercials. He could, and probably should, just run reruns of his old videos and save himself the work at this point. Cops are bad, bad are cops. Buy the trifold, buy the 5A cop card. Would anyone actually notice if he put on old footage? Would anyone care? He'd still get 5 to 15,000 people in total viewership, under 100 comments, and about 100 likes. Side note, Project Constitution Campbell does exactly what we're talking about, chopping up old videos he produced for DeCastro and putting out his own version of the 5A cop cards and trifolds in order to make a living. DeCastro can learn a lot from his former partner about exploiting his footage. Turning back to DeCastro, 600,000 subscribers. His target demographic is the United States, yet most of his views come when bot farms are most active, and nearly the entire population of the United States is asleep. Again, we're falling into Chileisms, but there's something very wrong in Chileville, and we're hoping he's taken the day to correct the course as the ship is approaching the iceberg, and there's absolutely no belief that not even God can sink this channel. Expect his return to live streaming later today. Flashback to July 22nd, 2023. Jose Chile de Castro attempted to fundraise for Jason Dollhide's bond Friday night after successfully finishing this fundraiser for a disabled fan. De Castro played the majority of Dollhide's arrest after a confrontation with police in an Oklahoma park last year during the stream, laughing and giggling his way through the video and appearing to have problems focusing for long periods of time during the live stream. With a conversation between De Castro and Dollhide's wife Heather playing in the background, Heather telling DeCastro that she needed to raise another $500 towards the goal of $6,250 she said she needed towards her husband's bond. Jason Dollhide called DeCastro during the event, clearing up some of the inconsistencies of the case in the brief call. Dollhide indicated that he has been in jail since Saturday, July 15th, and currently faces charges of eluding and assaulting police officers after he attempted to avoid them when they came to his house to bring him into custody after a previous bond had been revoked. Dollahide claimed that he had initially been bonded out of custody after a bail bondsman covered the $10,000 bond, but he was denied release after multiple new charges were added, including a felony. Of the 10 new charges, only 2 were later picked up by prosecutors. The $10,000 bond was then increased to $125,000. The reported initial bond request by police for the altercation was $400,000, but was reduced to $125,000. Dollahide then stated that his lawyer was trying to have it all reduced further, with Heather Dollahide raising money towards the 10% needed to free him once the bond was further reduced. DeCastro eventually raised the money needed by the Dollahides. It is unclear when or if Dollahide will be released from jail. GoFundMe, DeCastro humiliated by LIA. The string of losses keep piling up for Jose Chile DeCastro. Once describing himself as the best fundraiser in the world, he's now gone 4 days without a donation to his crowdsourcing campaigns and lost Monday to Sean Paul Long Island Audit's Riaz. Riaz's Support the Fight Against Tyranny and Corruption campaign pulled in $50 to take the win on Monday, followed closely by her own ongoing expenses fund with a $35 take. Our second place showing, and any showing at all, effectively crushing our dreams of multiple days of goose eggs, as we're both pleasantly surprised by donations and soul-crushingly depressed about having to continue to write this very column. But at least we're not Chile DeCastro. DeCastro's Legal Defense Fund crime scene tape illegal arrest campaign hasn't had a donation in 2 months and stands at $2,315 out of its $30,000 goal and an 8% completion rate. This was the campaign that was supposed to be funding his high-powered lawyer for his upcoming trial in Las Vegas for obstructing an officer. No, not that one, the other one. This is the one where he was out and alone on the streets of Vegas in February of this year and decided to walk under some crime scene tape and confront police officers who were investigating a fatal traffic accident. That's his worst campaign, but they're all bad in their own ways. His lawyer fund only, all dollars go to lawyers campaign, sits at $20,922 out of a $25,000 goal and 85% completion rate. It hasn't had a donation in the past 8 days. This fund was originally set to raise money to fulfill his promise to Garrett Press with Ranker Van Nett to pay his legal bills. DeCastro has no choice about that promise as he stupidly signed a contract to cover the expenses. But this campaign later evolved into every dime going to DeCastro's own legal defenses. DeCastro's Legal Aid Fund Donation Fund Help People Fund, again, which had the original purpose to help others with legal needs before being converted into a straight put money into my own pocket fundraiser, is stuck at $27,015 out of a $35,000 goal and hasn't seen a donation in 4 days. Rounding things out, his newest fund, Justice for All Legal Battle for Accountability, hasn't had a donation in 4 days and is stuck at $4,508 out of a $100,000 goal. DeCastro launched this campaign when he was released from jail and promised that every person who donated would be invited to a party and have a hotel room purchased for them with the money he would get from the 7-figure payout from the lawsuit he was filing against Nevada once he reached the $100,000 goal. Well, it looks like the 56 people who donated won't get their chance to party with DeCastro anytime soon. The fund is concerning because it started so strongly and immediately fizzled as DeCastro squandered all the goodwill he had in his return and is not connecting with his donors. DeCastro recently claimed that he put out roughly $70,000 in legal fees this year, with $17,000 coming out of his own pocket. The remaining $53,000 came from his donors, either through crowdsourcing or direct donations. He's made $54,760 from his GoFundMe campaigns, more than likely $52,000 after GoFundMe takes its cut, which was roughly the money he needed to cover his legal bills. But that was for his existing legal bills. He still has to pay his attorney in Maryland to fight the upcoming Cullen Project Constitution Campbell harassment case. He still must pay another $10,000 to his lawyer in his ongoing Las Vegas city obstruction case. He still is paying Michael Mee for his ongoing federal civil rights lawsuit against the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We're not even getting to the $100,000 he claims he needs before hiring the best civil rights lawyer for his wrongful arrest, wrongful conviction case against the state of Nevada. Any cases against the corrupt Justice of the Peace Ann Zimmerman, plus he still owes $30,000 to Press with Ranker's attorney for a contract he signed earlier in the year. DeCastro hasn't live-streamed in 2 days. He's made a handful of trifold and 5A cop card sales in the time he's been on the air since getting out of jail, matching the sales with special donations and giveaways. We'd estimate he made $500 to $1,000 in actual on-air sales since returning. We know Social Blade projects his YouTube monthly earnings to be between $3,600 and $57,600 a month, so maybe we're wrong and he's rolling in cash because he just got paid by YouTube. But something else tells us that with the suspicious views and short views, those earnings are on the low side. He wouldn't need to crowdsource for $100,000 to buy a lawyer if he was making $57,600 a month. Food for thought as we go into another day. Wallace announces return to Colombia. In the never-ending will he stay or will he go story of Floyd Wallace, the YouTuber announced on Monday that he was attempting to leave immediately for Colombia once he raised the money for the trip and retrieved a new Social Security card from Nebraska. The YouTuber's Monday early stream was devoted to fundraising for the trip, claiming he only needed $192 of the $240 round-trip tickets would cost if he were to purchase the tickets right away. He warned of the urgency as funding his trip would cost his fans a low price now, but would become much harder for his fans to pay for closer to his departure date. Wallace said that he would pick up girls and get himself some women to feature on camera for his viewers if only they donated. He said that women are much easier to bed in Colombia, and he wanted to stay for 2 months this time, saving a month on his visa for a return trip later this year. Addressing his ongoing criminal case, with jury selection for his trial in Oklahoma set for August 14, 2024, for charges of obstructing an officer, Wallace implied that he could simply have his lawyer delay the trial for 2 months at a whim, and the charges were nothing to worry about. Despite saying he was going to leave immediately, Wallace announced that he needed to travel to Nebraska before leaving in order to get a new Social Security card. His previous Social Security card and driver's license were lost or stolen as he re-entered the United States earlier in the year. While Wallace can simply fill out an online form and go to any Social Security office to retrieve a new card, he seemed to be insistent on traveling to Omaha, Nebraska before leaving for his extended vacation in Colombia. When asked about the woman known as the Stud, who served as Wallace's personal Uber maid, sex partner, and cook during his last visit, he laughed at the thought of reuniting with her as their last encounter went sour. Wallace promised that he's purchased a chest harness for his phone and will be able to secretly film his conquest in Colombia if his fans fulfilled his fundraising demands. The YouTuber ended his stream early as no one had donated in the hour of live broadcasting. Wallace has since set the stream to private status. Benson and DMA protest lack of free Wi-Fi. Regan Benson and Christopher Denver Metro Audits Cordova stormed their way through the streets of Denver, spreading peace, love, and unhappiness on Monday after being denied the use of free Wi-Fi at a mayoral event in the Paramount Hotel. Mayor Mike Johnston was having a State of the City event on Monday at the private business, but offering it as a public forum. According to Benson, all the members of the mainstream media agreed that there would be no big cameras to cover the event, but reporters could live stream using their phones if they wanted to. Benson and Cordova, as part of the citizen press, did not agree to or know about the terms when going through security or entering the building. They had a brief confrontation with organizers over Cordova's large staff-like camera apparatus. While the pair initially agreed that Cordova would not film using his camera staff, the pair stormed out of the facility when they were not able to obtain either the hotel's private Wi-Fi reserved for guests or the government-run Wi-Fi provided to members of Johnston's staff in order to live stream. Benson immediately took her rage out on members of the Denver police force, including one officer who was sitting in his patrol jeep calmly eating his lunch. Benson asked if the man was on the clock and being paid, and when he answered the affirmative, she demanded he put his lunch down and interact with her as she was a taxpayer, and he would stop what he was doing to answer her questions. When the man continued to eat while answering her questions, Benson attacked him verbally, telling him to screw himself before storming off. She later explained to Cordova that the man was going out of his way to taunt her and was answering questions with his mouth open in a deliberate attempt to taunt her. She said she hoped the officer would soon be fired for being part of the old guard, who are apparently on their way out after the recent lawsuit that was settled in her favor with the city of Denver. Benson continued confronting police officers throughout the 2.5-hour live stream and sharing her thoughts on policing in Denver. She asserted that the recently announced juvenile golfing program put on by the Denver Police Department was an indoctrination campaign to turn children into future police officers and that it was an incredible waste of money. After the governor's event finished, Benson approached the women running the gift bag booth about the fate of leftover gift bags. When she was informed that the leftover gift bags would be distributed to children at schools in the Denver area, she became angry and stated that the kids got everything and wondered aloud why the homeless were always forgotten. Cordova served as Benson's sidekick and yes-man during the event, offering little original thought and seemed incapable of independent action without Benson's approval. While his strange aggression patterns were on full display at the event, he continues to seek approval from Benson before taking any action when the pair are together. The livestream drew an observed 62 viewers out of her 22,000 subscribers at peak viewership. LVMPD responds to DeCastro over motion to dismiss. Jose Chile DeCastro was conspicuous by his absence from live streaming for the second day in a row, as he failed to appear on YouTube nor address Monday's filing by the defense in his civil case against the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. Extending DeCastro's very bad weekend into Monday, the filing by the Las Vegas Metro Police Department's reply to DeCastro's reply to their motion to dismiss essentially humiliated the First Amendment auditor, as it showed that he put little to no effort into his reply to have the case continued. Addressing the elephant in the room, DeCastro's recent state-level acquittal on the appeal of the charges involved in the case, Craig R. Anderson, representing the LVMPD, asserted that the ruling did not matter as the judge in the federal case already ruled that police had probable cause to arrest DeCastro for obstruction in the case. Directly addressing DeCastro's accusation that he backed up after being commanded to do so, Anderson referred to the body cam footage that clearly showed that DeCastro ignored multiple commands to back up by the arresting officer and only backed up after the officer announced that DeCastro was being detained. Addressing DeCastro's claims that he aggravated a shoulder injury in the arrest, as 2 sets of handcuffs used on him to extend his range of motion were not enough to prevent further injury, Anderson pointed out that DeCastro had the opportunity to provide medical experts or medical records to show that an injury indeed occurred, and he declined to do so. Likewise, DeCastro had the opportunity to show that he suffered damage from a blow to the groin or that Officer Jesse Sandoval used significant force on DeCastro's arm, but declined to even attempt to give proof that either injury ever happened. DeCastro's claims that he was defamed by the officers who he claimed made false statements in the reports and that he was lied to about the reasoning for his arrest were also in question, as neither had anything to do with the actual motion to dismiss the case. Anderson closed the reply by requesting the ability to reply if DeCastro was allowed by the judge in the case to update his reply to the motion based on his recent state-level acquittal of the charges made in the case. DeCastro is suing the LVMPD for $5 million. He is represented by attorney Michael Mee in the federal civil rights lawsuit. Reed hearing becomes a circus again. The hearing for Karen Reed's murder trial on Monday lasted a little over 5 minutes as it streamed on various platforms, with Karen Reed's new trial set for January 27, 2025, and a motions hearing set for August 9, 2024, to go over defense motions to attempt to have 2 of her 3 charges dropped. New Reed attorney Martin Weinberg joined David Dianetti at the brief hearing. The men are set to argue at the August hearing that since they heard from friends of jurors that the jury would have found Reed innocent of 2 of the 3 charges but did not enter that as a verdict, retrying Reed for those charges would amount to double jeopardy. Jurors supposedly were to vote 12-0 in favor of acquittal on charges of second-degree murder and leaving the scene after knowingly causing injury to then-boyfriend John O'Keefe. Reed has since been rumored to be in a relationship with defense attorney Alan Jackson, a member of her legal team. The prosecution countered that the jury was given the opportunity to enter the verdict before a mistrial was declared and declined to do so. Since the trial was over, as the jury said they were hopelessly deadlocked and could not produce a verdict, it is not double jeopardy to try Reed on the same charges, as no verdict was ever entered. Judge Beverly Cannoni warned both sides that she would hear the motions at the next hearing and to prepare for an immediate appeal from either side depending on how she ruled on the matter. Outside of the venue, members of the Free Karen Reed movement dressed in pink confronted members of the Justice for John O'Keefe movement who were dressed in blue. The color-coordinated protesters appeared ready to battle like 2 groups of henchmen in the old Batman television series, with Turtle Boy Aidan Kearney urging action from the pink protesters on a bullhorn. Kearney himself became angered when he spotted nemesis Kate Peter across the street from him and deliberately attempted to approach her multiple times, despite living in fear of her and having a protection order against her. The diminutive blogger protested when a police officer standing next to Peter told him that Peter did nothing wrong, as she was standing and not engaging with Kearney, despite Kearney moving within the confines of the 30-foot distance outlined in the protective order. Enraged, Kearney went to the local police department to file a complaint about Peter violating his protection order and complained loudly on Twitter that he was in a similar situation with ex-girlfriend Lindsay Gaetini earlier in the year and faced charges of violating the protection order Gaetini has against him. Kearney spent most of the night on Twitter attacking Peter in a display of his abject terror at the thought of Peter walking free of the obvious abuse of the protection order. Both Kearney and Peter have hearings for alleged existing violations of various protection orders in August. We will cover them as they happen. GoFundMe, DeCastro's return doesn't move market. Jose Chile de Castro's triumphant return to live streaming after 2 days off saw his Tuesday night live stream peak at 600 live viewers, 376 comments, 1,300 likes, and the usual mysterious 15,309 views in the hour since it aired, and not a dime in GoFundMe donations. Complaining about low-grade dog food in the dungeon, causing his hair to thin, and not perhaps 4 months away from his hair restoration products, he claimed that he was a bit off since returning to life outside of the jail and starting to make himself more electable. He proclaimed his channel to be the only honest channel on YouTube and praised himself for calling the police out as the bad guys. De Castro reaffirmed his hatred for police and his belief that police officers only make things worse. Bizarrely, he admitted to making changes to his channel in order to make himself electable, stating that the new plan for the minute was going to tone down his persona and pivot to the center with less inflammatory tactics. Then he immediately ignored the toning down and praised himself for not holding back in comparison to the other channels he audited during his time away from work. Otherwise, De Castro seemed to have listened to our criticisms a bit. His normal 3-hour meandering mess of an infomercial was replaced with a targeted show with the overall subject of an Illinois police officer facing trial for the death of Sonia Massey. He kept the show under an hour and a half, repledged his threat to use the media to destroy Justice of the Peace Ann Zimmerman, but then pledged a new beginning where he gave up old grudges and moved forward. Again. And he drew not a dime on GoFundMe for his grand return of Beggar Vance. GoFundMe-wise, the day was dominated by a single big donation from a very good friend to this channel. It was a figure that will offset a lot of the costs we had over the weekend with licensing rights, and will make life a bit easier when dealing with my father from September to January and football season. It was directly given to improve the channel and life beyond the channel, as treating a parent who has dementia and needs a certain stability in his life every Sunday, or there'll be hell to pay, is not much of a worry. Still not happy about being reamed by YouTube and the NFL Sunday ticket package. If we can get it away with Dad being engrossed in football, it's much less of a burden on my mom and me. Sorry for getting human there for a minute, it'll pass. And yes, on days when the mighty Seattle Seahawks play at 4 p.m. Eastern, we might be getting pants hosting the live Sunday shows instead of me. Just saying. I let Chili ruin 2022. I let a con man ruin 2023. I'm going to enjoy the 2024 football season, even if the joke will be, and you let the Seahawks ruin 2024. Getting back to DeCastro, this is the sort of donation he should be getting. Not to harp again, but he has 597,000 subscribers. You can say they're fake. I'm not willing to get sued over agreeing with you, but somewhere in there may be a few live actual human beings who care about him. Right now he's falling apart. Receding hairline, cracked teeth, weird white and peeling lips, chins that he's not trying to hide anymore, along with a body bloat that no longer can be hidden under a hoodie as it's too freaking hot in Las Vegas. This is not the Jose Chili DeCastro that his viewers know, and for that, it should get him at least a pity donation to his many GoFundMe campaigns. But he isn't. We'll probably devote thousands of words in the near future to why it's not working, but for today we'll just note that the big return was anything but, and the market, which lives or dies with DeCastro, will only be briefly propped up by our donation today and continue the free fall tomorrow. Something has to change. Others have to start caring about promoting their campaigns again, or the means of supporting their hobby/lifestyle/cause to die upon that hill is going to fade away. Since we're not monetized, if you'd like to join our daily hate watcher in making us dance like we don't think anyone is watching, we do have a GoFundMe of our own. All proceeds go to keeping the lights on, eating, and writing new stories to feature here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. Wallace endorses pay-to-play dating. Again. Passport bro enthusiast and sex tourist Floyd Wallace put out a new video this week, fully endorsing the concept of a pay-to-play lifestyle as an alternative to traditional dating. Paying to play, or essentially giving a date money in exchange for sex acts, has been a staple of Wallace's philosophy on dating for some time now. Despite the implication of turning his date into a prostitute, Wallace seemed happy as long as sex was involved in the transaction. Previously, Wallace had routinely expressed his preference for paying for and engaging in sexual activities at the start of a date, and if the date went sour, he could separate from his companion and still have had his sexual needs satisfied for the night. In Wallace's new video, a snippet taken from a larger discussion with the host of the Go Abroad Now YouTube channel, he pushed the idea that it's better to pay for sex up front with a woman in a third world country than to pay an enormous amount on an actual date with an American woman with no guarantee of sex. Wallace related to a story of how happy a woman was in a third world country as he took her to McDonald's, and implied that he paid for sexual acts which cost him a total of $30 for the entire date, including the meal. He marveled at the woman's happiness in being taken to McDonald's in exchange for the transaction, and seemed to imply that he bettered the woman's life. Both men stated they knew their roles in America, and engaging in regular sex through a normal dating life was too expensive for the average man, especially when expensive dates did not guarantee sex. Their premise continued with the viewpoint that women in third world countries are more agreeable to sex with Americans, are essentially disposable, and paying to play guarantees sexual satisfaction with an impoverished person who may be willing to engage in sexual activities to better their lives. Wallace has previously admitted to paying to play in his visit to Nebraska earlier in the year, admitting the encounter was his only sexual conquest in the United States since returning from his last sex tourism vacation. The YouTuber is expected to leave for Colombia for another sex tourism vacation later this month. Benson unhinged rant at Inglewood City Council. Regan Benson spent Monday night in her favorite place, in front of a podium at the Inglewood City Council, screaming at the council members. For whatever reason, Benson missed advance sign-ups for the longer 5-minute speaking sessions and was granted 3 minutes in order to spew venomous tirades against the city council, writing on the sign-up sheet that she was going to address the police in her speech. Benson then targeted council member Joe Anderson in her remarks, calling him a moron and accusing him of laughing and giggling as she spoke, eventually screaming at him that he should immediately resign from the city council as he was a disgrace. The YouTuber doesn't live in Inglewood, but claims she has power over the city as she lives in Denver, and Denver is contracted to supply emergency services to the smaller city. Benson's obsession with Inglewood in particular came years ago when she was denied the use of employee bathrooms on the 3rd floor of the Civic Center during an audit of the building. Her obsession with using the 3rd floor bathrooms has become an often comical diversion from her more serious topics, as she has been determined to change the policy of keeping the public out of those bathrooms and won't stop until she gets the change made. Her actual speech in front of the council concerned Denver picking up an investigation into an incident that happened in October of last year, where Benson claims police assaulted a man for attempting to enter a homeless woman's vehicle in order to help get the vehicle started. They then issued an arrest warrant for the man after he fled on foot from the officers, in Benson's version, later illegally arresting the man in a private residence. Benson claims the man has been harassed ever since the incident, with pending legal charges based on the alleged assault by the Inglewood Police Department. She included copies of the paperwork of the investigation by Denver police for everyone on the council and in positions of power at the meeting, except for Anderson, who she claimed was a moron who should have apologized to her for appearing on the Frauditor Troll show to discuss Benson's activities earlier in the year. Benson has pledged to continue her reign of terror against Inglewood until such a time as all the members of the corrupt police force resign, and apparently until the members of the city council she disagrees with resign as well. Her regular Monday night attacks on members of the city council, often filled with falsehood or Benson versions of events, recounting every slight, every bother, and everything on her mind, have come to the point of parody to most viewers of her YouTube channel. Final ruling released in DeCastro appeal. Monday's release of the final order of Judge Michelle Levitt gave Jose Chile de Castro a small victory on Monday, reaffirming his win in some people's eyes, while reestablishing the belief that the prosecution didn't try in the case and literally handed the victory to de Castro. Levitt's ruling essentially came down to her belief that de Castro complied with the order by Officer Brandon Bork to move back, and Bork was at fault for not telling de Castro how far to move back. Unlike the ruling that Bork had probable cause to arrest de Castro by the judge in de Castro's ongoing federal civil rights lawsuit, the fact that de Castro backed up a few feet after being told he was being detained was enough to sway Levitt. Judge Levitt said in a ruling that the lower court did not consider the recent ruling in Wilson v. First Judicial District Court, with her claims echoing the defense in the case, and literally no other commentator or expert who has reviewed the case, that obstruction is a physical act. The prosecution in the case replied with a weak "nah-ha" to her contentions, but being the judge, she ruled that this was a right-to-film case and that de Castro was somehow being punished for filming police, despite the testimony of Officer Bork and the specific statements made by Justice of the Peace Ann Zimmerman reaffirming de Castro's right to film. Levitt's ruling again comes off as a quick get this case off my docket ruling that sided with a passionate defense rather than an indifferent prosecution. It reads as if defense attorney Christopher Oram wrote it for the judge, and if he did, we have no doubt the prosecutor would not have noticed. De Castro is attempting to ask the court in his federal civil rights lawsuit to consider Levitt's verdict, despite previously ruling in favor of the Las Vegas Metro Police Department that Bork had probable cause to arrest de Castro, and it remains to be seen how much of an impact this decision will ultimately have on the federal court case. This day in history, July 24th, 2024. July 24th fell on a Monday in 2023 and saw stories featuring Kate Peter, Turtle Boy, Uncle Artie, and Jose Chile de Castro dominate the news for the day. Turtle Boy Aiden Curdy was fresh off his rolling rally in front of the homes of witnesses in the Karen Reed murder case that was held 2 days before his live stream. Kearney led supporters to protest outside of the homes of various members of the Albert and McCabe families, calling them murderers and demanding that they change their testimony in the case and admit that they were in on a plot to frame Karen Reed for the murder of John O'Keefe. Kearney was in the news as he watched a Dateline NBC segment that aired on the Today Show on Reed's case. He claimed in the stream that Reed was being framed by members of the McCabe and Albert family. O'Keefe was supposedly murdered by Colin Albert and others, then his body was dumped on Brian Albert's front lawn in a snowstorm. He predicted that Brian Albert would commit suicide and leave a note taking the blame for the murder to take the heat off of Colin Albert. Turtle Boy nemesis Kate Peter also went live that Monday with an impromptu live stream to examine a video Kearney had put out where he called a worker at the Norfolk County Superior Court and displayed knowledge of motions that were not released to the public as of yet. We now know that Kearney was then working with Karen Reed as her unofficial minister of propaganda and had apparently been provided copies of motions by Reed that had yet to be made public. The court worker asked how Kearney got copies of the motions, as one of the motions literally had only been filed with the court 10 minutes previous to the phone call. Kearney had turned the inquiry by the worker into an accusation of a cover-up and that the worker was somehow hiding the truth from the public. Peter questioned why the defense was going all in on accusing others of the murder, while providing little or no evidence to defend Reed, further noting that Kearney's independent actions seemed to fall in line with whatever the defense was promoting that week. Over in the world of Jose Chile de Castro, Jason Dollahide interrupted de Castro's regularly scheduled infomercial with a call from the Norman, Oklahoma detention center. Dollahide had been jailed the week before as his various bonds for incidents over the years had been pulled after a blow-up with a woman at a shopping center earlier in the year. When police tried to apprehend Dollahide, he famously ran from them with his daughter in the car, allegedly committing vehicular assault in the process. The half-baked YouTuber had all of his bonds rescinded by the bail bondsman who put up the money to cover Dollahide's original bond, as his new charges involved assaulting police officers. Dollahide now faced a $150,000 bond, which his wife Heather was working on raising. Because his previous bonds were rescinded, no bail bondsman in the state of Oklahoma would work with the Dollahide family without putting up significant collateral to cover the bond. Dollahide remains in the Norman, Oklahoma detention center to this day after being convicted of lesser offenses. He is expected to serve his time in jail first for those convictions before being transferred to the state prison where he awaits extensive time in prison for his assault on the police officers. Finally, on this day in history, popular YouTuber Uncle Artie announced the opening of his relaxation channel. The channel featured relaxation and meditation videos, a departure from his usual comedic stylings. You can visit all the stories from this day in history at our website at reallycoolsite.org. GoFundMe, De Castro beats LIA again. A rare single $50 donation to his Justice for All Legal Battle for Accountability Fund won the day for Jose Chile de Castro, beating out our own hate viewers' donation of $10 and totally dominating the $0.00 take of rival Sean Paul Long Island Audit Riaz. Riaz, of course, isn't aware of this rivalry, but the one-for-one I'm a better auditor than that guy rants by de Castro over the years have established that Long Island audits and perhaps lackluster will be crushed by the power, the glory, and the sheer machismo of Jose Chile de Castro. Or maybe not. Right now, Long Island Audit has about 200,000 more subscribers than de Castro. It's really a meaningless number with the accusations against de Castro's mysterious subscriber growth, but in the past PP-wee-wee rant, de Castro said he was on a path to crush Long Island Audit to be the biggest auditor on the planet. It's not quite happening. According to Social Blade, DeCastro has picked up 17,000 new subscribers in the past 30 days to Long Island Audit's 21,000 new subscribers. DeCastro at the disadvantage there because he was in jail for part of the month, but at the same time, their daily and weekly averages of new subscribers aren't too far off. Purchased, shorts, or what have you. DeCastro has the advantage of sheer number of videos released across shorts, regular videos, and live streams. He has 2,796 uploads to 285,572,100 video views, against Long Island Audit's 824 videos and 365,302,841 video views. Mind you, DeCastro had the advantage of having an extra year to work with, as Long Island Audit brightened our world with the creation of his channel on March 8, 2021, while DeCastro's channel came into the world on July 28, 2020. But it doesn't seem to have helped in the comparison, as Long Island Audit's sheer volume of video views crushes DeCastro in every aspect. Earning-wise, well, let's just say that DeCastro can't compare, at least not right now. Social Blade says DeCastro will make between $3,800 and $60,900 a month, and between $45,700 and $730,600 for the year off of YouTube revenue. We now know why Long Island Audit can go out and buy a billboard truck without batting an eye. Social Blade says he's making between $6,600 and $106,400 a month, and between $79,800 and $1,300,000 a year off of YouTube revenue. Merchandise-wise, Long Island Audit offers t-shirts, hats, and normal things you'd see in a merchandise store run by a third-party print-on-demand shop. DeCastro offers, well, a poster, a book, his 5A cop card, both digital and physical, trifolds, both digital and physical, and not much else. You're not going to see people walking around in a DeCastro-style t-shirt right now, as they're gone from his marketplace. DeCastro scores a point as most of us know the names of his biggest supporters: Gloria, Cope Dog, Jeff Hates Pigs, etc. His chat and comments are slow enough to figure out his mods and his friends. With between 200 and 600 people at his daily infomercials, it's pretty easy to pick out the who's who in the community. Long Island Audits doesn't have the same sense of community, and he draws over 7,000 people to his streams, and the chat scrolls so fast that if there's an established community, you'll never see it or keep up with it. The biggest thing holding back DeCastro is that he's lost his mojo for a while now. He's so afraid of going back to jail, and afraid of going to jail before that he no longer does audits. He no longer goes looking for trouble either. He's gotten safe and stale, unwilling to bust his ass for anything more than his 3-hour infomercials where he reacts to somebody else's content. While Long Island Audits occasionally looks at others' content, his bread and butter is auditing. He has no fear of being arrested, and he often plans his arrest around lawsuits he intends to file to make money. He also runs a tight ship, and frankly, if auditing was a profession, DeCastro still has a lot to learn from Long Island Audits. Not that we're endorsing him, but out of the two, Long Island Audits at this time wins the title of better auditor by sheer volume alone. DeCastro will never surpass him to become the world's greatest auditor until he gets over his fears and goes out into the street again to produce original content. $50 today made him a winner. Long Island Audits didn't pull in any GoFundMe donations, but if he's earning over $1 million a year from YouTube, does he really need the $50? Things to think about. Since we're not yet monetized, if you'd like to join our daily hate watcher in making us question the existence of pie, we do have a GoFundMe of our own. All proceeds go to keeping the lights on, eating, and writing new stories to feature here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. GoFundMe, no winners in war. Again. Jose Chile de Castro, Sean Paul, Long Island Audit Riaz, and our own ongoing expenses fund were among the group of losers competing for the GoFundMe crown on Thursday, with the winner ultimately going to Goose Eggs. Despite new videos by LIA and De Castro, we had the day off due to a lack of news. There was no action in the market, leaving everyone a loser for the day. For some funds, it was business as usual, but our usual big red flag waving comes with De Castro's funds, as he claims he needs them the most. Yesterday, you heard a comparison between De Castro and Long Island Audit, where we proclaimed, without endorsing anything about his channel, Long Island Audit the victor and better auditing channel based on sheer metrics and money coming in. It's true, Long Island Audit probably has more money in his couch cushions or his navel than De Castro has in his whole world. De Castro also has much more to lose. While Long Island Audit is facing criminal charges, he's in no danger of actually going to jail, while De Castro himself is fighting tooth and nail to keep his freedom and to punish those who have wronged him. Remember that Long Island Audit has his petty vendettas and his money-making vendettas. If you believe him, instead of life, liberty, and the overall belief in the Constitution, the vast majority of his targets are for go-away money, quick dismissals, and pocketing of some quick ducats from otherwise easy targets. There's no real risk for the reward, but it's built the empire for Long Island Audit and will continue to fund him, as there's always going to be a corrupt cop in the New York area for him to exploit, sue, and live off like the world's biggest tick. De Castro, on the other hand, has a history of playing the long shots and devoting his time to petty revenge that earned him nothing. We go back to the Kate Peter and Josh Abrams situation. The YouTuber was out for blood, not for victory, not for financial gain. He wanted to wipe Kate Peter off of the internet and expended nearly a year of his time to a lawsuit that literally went nowhere. He realized this early and tried to pivot to a lawsuit against YouTube itself, and all it really gained him was all the free publicity he used to get from criticism videos went by the wayside because he struck everyone who used his content to criticize him into oblivion. Yes, Mr. Freedom of the Press struck everyone to stifle their speech because he didn't like criticism. Without the showcase of criticism from literally dozens of channels saying his name and spreading the word about him every night, his own actions made him a lolcow and cost him the free advertising and growth within the 1A community. As of right now, we're one of the main channels that goes out of their way to cover De Castro on a regular basis. Our context for covering him is news, and we don't use his content, so attempts to silence us will have to come through other means if it happens. But again, would it be worth it? Long Island Audits doesn't do it. He tends to embrace free advertising and not change course. Again, not an endorsement, but another wise way to maintain the course without self-destructing or going against the very philosophies that you claim to stand for. Since we're not monetized, if you'd like to join our daily hate watcher making us stand for hours to defend our principles, we do have a GoFundMe of our own. All proceeds go to keeping the lights on, eating, and writing new stories to feature here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. Regan Benson alleges racial profiling. Regan Benson livestreamed Thursday night from the Inglewood Police Department and made new allegations that the Inglewood Police racially profiled 3 black men who were trespassed from a King Soopers grocery store in Inglewood. Benson said that as part of her new duties as unofficial police monitor in Inglewood, she came across a scene in a Walmart parking lot last Friday where multiple police officers were surrounding 3 black men. The YouTuber got out of her car and began to engage with one of the men, who she thought was a minor, who gave her a thumbs up that the police were treating them okay. She later met with the men and watched footage provided by the men of the encounter inside the nearby King Soopers that caused the interaction with police. The men, 2 aged 18 and 1 19, claimed that they were selling candy outside of the King Soopers grocery store when they were told to leave the private property by security. things allegedly escalated on the part of the security guard, and the security guard allegedly threatened to pepper spray the three men if they did not leave the property. According to the police report obtained by Benson during the broadcast, police arrived at the King Soopers and the manager asked the police to trespass the men who had already left the property. The police found the men in a nearby Walmart parking lot and asked them to identify. Two of the men had no identification, and a third was identified as having a warrant out of Florida. The men did not have identification from any schools or affiliation with charities in the area, and it's unclear if they were affiliated with a charity that was running a campaign to sell candy in Inglewood. As police could not identify two of the three men, they were fingerprinted, and photos were taken as part of the identification process, and all three men were released with a notice not to return to the King Soopers. In Benson's exaggerated version of events, the men were about to be arrested even though police admitted that they did not have probable cause until she arrived on the scene and intervened. The corrupt Inglewood police simply saw her on the scene and stopped what they were doing because they knew that she would stop their illegal enforcement of the law. Benson then demanded a citizens review board be established in Inglewood, which would have oversight into any of the issues that she and others investigated, and to handle complaints in the aftermath of Inglewood Police Chief's supposed resigning in disgrace. Watson announced his retirement earlier this month. His last day will be September 22, 2024. No replacement has been announced as of press time. DeCastro attacks police in latest live stream. Despite claiming that he wanted to be more electable, Jose Chile DeCastro launched into multiple attacks on law enforcement during his 3.5-hour-long live stream Thursday night. DeCastro claimed that he was a leader of a movement that was growing every day, as it was now more than just black people who hated the police. He was unifying forces against police as they acted inappropriately against everyone, and that everyone hated them equally in this movement. The live stream, which had been viewed 11,813 times, had 1,200 likes and 155 comments as of press time, saw DeCastro attempt to tone down his rhetoric at times where he would refuse to call police pigs, but then would see the YouTuber get upset and fall back into the use of pigs as part of his accusations against police activities. DeCastro also has now begun using the term slave cuffs at times instead of torture cuffs for his description of handcuffs. This came during his review of an old interview by Sheriff David Clark of Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, that was aired on CNN, which recently made rounds in the 1A auditing community. Clark, who is black, upset DeCastro with his defense of the law and his apparent betrayal of members of his own race by backing corrupt police policies and procedures designated to enslave Americans. Addressing criticism of his crying at an appeals court hearing earlier in the year, DeCastro had claimed that he was locked in the hole for 5 days before the hearing and was only told that he was being released from the hole moments before being taken to court. He explained that upon seeing humans for the first time in days, he started crying and continued to cry throughout the hearing and didn't stop until he was returned to jail later that day. He denied faking the episode and said the tears were uncontrollable. The YouTuber ended his live stream with news that customers who did not receive orders while he was incarcerated should email him directly, and he was now extensively working out to take off the weight that he put on while in jail. DeCastro avoids case dismissal? Jose Chile DeCastro's string of failures in regard to his activities in Ironton, Ohio 2 years ago may be coming to an end as he filed a last-minute request to extend time to serve defendants in his case against the police in Ironton, Ohio, which he filed in Nevada. DeCastro originally filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the city of Ironton, Ohio, and various defendants 2 years ago. He alleged a number of things, but never got around to actually stating a claim against any of the defendants. After multiple missed deadlines and DeCastro's apparent intention to stretch the case out as long as possible, it was originally dismissed in late 2022, but then revived after DeCastro's late filing to a final deadline was accepted. It again lingered for months, with De Castro refusing to state what anyone had done in the case or make a coherent legal argument. It was then dismissed with prejudice last fall. De Castro immediately appealed and lost the appeal last month when the appeals court finally reaffirmed the lower court ruling and dismissed the case. In March of this year, De Castro refiled the same case in Nevada, federal, and state-level courts against the same defendants, alleging that Nevada was now the proper place for the lawsuits as he resides there, and his fans who buy his products also reside there. The lawsuits were filed prior to De Castro's March incarceration, which he claims prevented him from serving the defendants. The federal suit has since given notice that De Castro's claims would be dismissed if he did not show proof of service or an indication as to why he could not serve the defendants in the case by July 27, 2024. De Castro's reply, written on July 25th but filed on July 26th, the day before the deadline, indicates that De Castro was unable to serve the defendants because he's been in jail, and that upon release from jail, he has been unable to skip trace the defendants in order to hire a process server. He also claims that he never received a notice from the court last month that the case would be dismissed, again stating that he only learned of the notice on July 25th, 2024. In the filing, De Castro admitted that some of his claims against the defendants would be dismissed with prejudice due to the 2-year statute of limitations. De Castro does not mention, however, that the entire case was dismissed with prejudice as the Ohio court's ruling was upheld on appeal. This is a breaking news story. GoFundMe Press with Rancor takes day. Jose Chile De Castro's fundraiser for Garrett Press with Rancor dominated Friday's GoFundMe take with $1,530 in new donations from a late-evening fundraiser, with De Castro promising to match the funds from his own personal bank account. As we're looking at his win over in its own article, we're going to be focusing on our own second-place win and some changes associated with the production of the newspaper and daily newscast. Our fund took in $200 for a second-place win, not to take anything from De Castro's great victory or to overinflate what went on with our own win yesterday. It was from a donor making an easier donation to our GoFundMe rather than figuring out exactly what we needed for flea treatment of the cats off of our animal-related Amazon registry. We'll probably be taking in more donations like that, so it's not reflective of the overall health of our campaign, as we had another large donation earlier in the week for a targeted donation with a specific purpose. As always, you'll see receipts over on our Discord server in the dedicated receipts channel. Right now, the receipt for the flea treatment is up, along with some of the purchases we've made with the donation from earlier in the week. We're looking into moving as many of our ongoing expenses into yearly expenses and getting them out of the way for the next year as more donations come in. Then we'll be focusing on expanding our purchases to one more big item for the fall. News forthcoming. Please know that this is a huge change, as my life is currently on display to everyone. While incidental purchases aren't accounted for, occasional fast food meals, buying a $5 movie off of Fandango at home, etc., showing the work and where the donations are going to is pretty much a requirement based on the actions of the person who ran our previous home. While we weren't involved in his activities, it is important to be as transparent and boring as possible with transactions so there's no question as to where the money is going as donations are made. There's more news we'll sneak in here, as the column is more often hijacked for everything but the focus of the article anyway. De Castro threw us off this morning as he actually had things to say in his 3-hour live stream. Starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, or right when we needed to go to bed to be up for 3 a.m., he went on for 90 minutes of semi-meaningful news in between his babble about donations. This, of course, killed us at 3 a.m. Do you know how hard it is to be up that early and then having to sit through Chile De Castro's babble? I know it's our job, but mornings like this sidetrack everything. I know, it's awful that I must watch the actual source before doing the article. But seriously, late in the evening news kills our workflow and kills the chances of getting the news out before noon on most days. It's also a change that is playing havoc with our scheduling, and I apologize for it. I signed up to do a newspaper. Everything else sort of morphed out of that, and I'm trying to get into a regular release pattern for fans of the old paper and our new YouTube presence. With the change from putting out a daily newspaper to doing a daily newspaper and a daily newscast in widescreen format, then a watch-along party in vertical format, and needing to fall over dead asleep at 6 a.m., it's certainly a change. In the past, I could get away with writing 2 or 3 pages total for the newspaper and be done with it. Now 2 pages means 3.5 to 4 minutes of airtime. We average between 14 and 17 minutes per newscast, so our page count comes in between 6 and 8 pages a day, depending on how fast I read everything. That doubling to quadrupling written content to feed the newscast is what's killing the early morning paper, and again I apologize for it. Trying to shuffle the hours in the day to figure out how I can do everything, as I can't afford help, and I know I'm too much of a control freak to work with everyone. Adding Verbo to the newscast watch party has helped, and quietly giving the all-star panels over to the panel to dominate is also helping a bit. It's out of necessity, and it's a lot of fun to see who's stepping up and running the shows as I push play on the videos in the background. I may just shift focus to the overnight hours and start production and go all night again. I need to do something to change things so those who love the paper in the morning aren't forgotten. That's important to me, and I'll work out a plan to make sure things are course corrected as I move forward. On that note, if you'd like to step up for our missing in action hate watcher, hey, hope you're okay, you bastard. In forcing us to continue to write this column each morning, we do have a GoFundMe of our own. All proceeds go to keeping the lights on, eating, and writing new stories to feature here and on ReallyCoolSite.org. DeCastro holds mediocre fundraiser for Rancer. An admittedly broke Jose Chili DeCastro attempted to stun everyone with a return to his supposed massive talents and fundraising on Friday night, with an unsuccessful attempt to put a dent in the $30,000 he owes for Garrett Press with Ranker's Van Net's legal bills. Despite DeCastro's previous claims of being the greatest fundraiser in history, his endeavors took in approximately $1,530 during his 3-hour fundraiser. He split the 3-hour show with 90 minutes dedicated to Press with Ranker's story and an interview with Press with Ranker's lawyer, Jim Mikowski, and the rest devoted to anti-police videos. The YouTuber explained that Ranker decided to start auditing based on DeCastro's own call for action, and he feels responsible that Ranker, who is an extreme introvert, is facing problems with the law. DeCastro explained that because of this, he would be matching all funds brought in during the fundraiser with money from his own bank account, despite struggling for funds of his own at the moment. DeCastro feigned shock at Mikowski's news that the officer involved in Ranker's current arrest was the same one involved in a previous incident with Ranker. He continued the exaggerated reaction as Mikowski revealed that Ranker had experienced run-ins with the officer's father, also a police officer, and that the officer's sister works in the office of the prosecutor who is trying the case. This new theory of generational conspiracy to frame Ranker for the crimes he's on trial for is information that had been previously featured many times by DeCastro in live streams and in produced videos for the channel. Ranker is facing felony charges of obstructing an officer and refusing to obey a lawful command from an arrest in Michigan last year. Mikowski painted Ranker's huge body frame, social awkwardness, and introvert status as factors in Ranker's arrests. He described Ranker as a sweet man who was socially challenged and not a perceived threat to anyone. DeCastro entered a $48,000 contract with attorney Mikowski earlier in the year, signing a contract to pay $6,000 a month to cover Van Net's legal expenses. He managed to make 3 of those payments with help from his fans before he was incarcerated in the Clark County, Nevada detention center. While Mikowski agreed to suspend payments while DeCastro was incarcerated, jury selection for the trial begins on Tuesday and payments are due. Mikowski indicated that he felt strongly that he would be able to find a non-biased jury despite Ranker's supposed extreme fame in the tiny community on Michigan's Upper Peninsula. DeCastro remains uncommitted to appearing at the trial in support of Ranker, despite previous promises to make an appearance. Ranker's GoFundMe had also not received DeCastro's matching donations as of press time. Wallace continues to endorse sex tourism. A new video released on Floyd Wallace's For and Only YouTube channel saw the YouTuber continue his endorsement of sex tourism and shared his thoughts on women from third world countries, dating, and the struggle with time. The new video was taken from an interview with YouTuber Jamie Woods earlier in the year and focused on the question of how Wallace deals with relationships with women in the countries he visits, despite knowing that he could not stay in the countries past 90 days. Wallace was candid that he ensures that the women he enters into sexual relationships with know that he is not going to be a long-time love and that he has no intention of honoring a commitment to them when he's away from them. The YouTuber explained that he felt like life is too short to wait for sex and relationships with one person, especially if you can only be present in their country for a small portion of the year. He indicated that he preferred sexual transactions instead of a long-term relationship, and that he could not see himself settling down anytime soon, as sexual encounters with women in third world countries were plentiful and required minimal effort on his part. Wallace recently indicated in other videos that it was too much work in the United States to satisfy his sexual needs, even with pay to play on the table. He stated that he preferred finding sexual partners in third world countries due to the willingness of the women to bed an American. He praised the lifestyle as he could return to a country multiple times and experience new and different women each time without repercussion. The YouTuber called out Argentina as a country that black men should avoid visiting, as he had a horrible experience entering the country. He claimed that Argentinian authorities demanded to see his bank account balance after seeing that he was not carrying cash. They wanted to prove that he was not broke and to establish that he was an American and not from a nation from an unspecified country in Africa. Wallace described women in Argentina as being discriminatory towards black men, and that one woman he attempted to cold approach simply ran off when he attempted to get her Instagram and WhatsApp contact details. Explaining that he left the country soon after that encounter, Wallace warned his fellow sex travelers to be aware of being labeled a sex pest in countries outside of the United States because it could result in unwanted jail time. Wallace has previously asserted that he was going to be visiting Colombia as the next stop on his continuing sex tourism schedule. DeCastro fundraising dominates this day in history. 1 year ago today, Jose Chile DeCastro announced that he was temporarily suspending his successful fundraising efforts on behalf of Jason and Heather Dollahide, as he had covered the family's bills for the month. Before suspending the campaign, DeCastro had encouraged his fans to skip meals and put aside petty purchases in order to come up with the money to help Heather Dollahide to raise the money for her husband's bond. DeCastro then openly encouraged Heather Dollahide to invest all the money that had been raised for bond on her husband's behalf into retaining a lawyer who would work on releasing her husband. He then dismissed her fears that giving all the money to the lawyer would take away all the money she had for the actual bond. The YouTuber had a busy day as his legal effort on behalf of Floyd Wallace's then ongoing lawsuit against the Las Vegas Metro Police Department was granted an extension to respond to the LVMPD's motion to dismiss the case. The LVMPD did not oppose the motion. DeCastro had previously denied having any involvement in Wallace's case, despite the case itself being filed by DeCastro, paid for by DeCastro, and having language identical to language used in DeCastro's own lawsuit against the LVMPD. The motion was also odd as it contained objections to police describing Wallace, a black man, as black, the color of the mask Wallace was wearing during the incident, and the direction a gun was pointed at him during his apprehension. Outside of the world of Jose Chile de Castro, YouTuber Christopher Direct D. Ruff encouraged his 236,000 subscribers to call flood the Nazis at the Mesa, Arizona Police Records Department. Ruff was upset that the records office was unable to release documents to a proxy. The records had been requested in the past but never picked up. Due to department policy, the records department was unable to fulfill the request for 700 pages of information Ruff had requested about his name, his alias, and his police-watching activities. Under department policy, the original requester of the documents needed to pick up the documents in person as they contained confidential information. Ruff was unable to pick the documents up himself as there was an active warrant for his arrest in Mesa for skipping court dates. The YouTuber felt unsafe picking up the documents as he would then be apprehended by police, which he was attempting to avoid. The warrant is still active a year later, with Ruff recently abandoning efforts to raise money for an attorney to help him clear up the warrants.